That's all of you. All right, and then I'm just gonna mute all of you, but like, feel free to unmute yourselves, or like, if there's like a raise hand feature or whatever, or chat, so that if you guys have a question, like, the whole point is like, as we're building something, to ask questions and like unearth like the concepts that you guys might not have like exactly gotten straight in like the active record stuff. Like, I really see kind of building something with all of you as really just kind of a way of like exposing all the different topics. So if you don't ask a question, you know, it won't be as interesting. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
How did we do that one?
All right. So let's do. Okay, so what we're gonna do is build like a little kind of command line blog application. Make sense? And whenever I sit down and build something, I guess the first thing I kind of like to do is just write out what I'm trying to build. That way I have like kind of like a really like loose like direction of like what I want to do, right? So like maybe in the beginning, one, welcome the person to their blog. Two, well, like, you know, maybe like right, something like that, right? That's kind of the idea. We start the program, we'll welcome the person, and then we'll give them a main menu with two options where they can read posts. So if they like type in like 1 for option 1, then we'll list out all of the blog posts we have. And then if they press like, okay, I want to read blog post number 7, we'll show them all of the like the title and description. And then we'll send them back to the read menu. So list out all of them if they want to read another one, or they can go back to the main menu. And when the main menu, if they click on write a post, then it'll ask them to like give us the post title and then you know, fill in the description. Kind of make sense? Okay. So this is what we wanted to do. There's like 100 things we have to kind of break down. And it'd be nice to kind of just start somewhere and like start writing down some requirements. So if this is going to work, what are just some like base things we need? Okay, remember you guys are muted, so.
So you're going to need a database to keep all the blogs once they're composed.
Perfect. We need a database. Other things.
Post class.
A what?
A post class.
Other things.
A user class.
Oh, yeah, let's assume, let's keep it simple. Like, you can always add that post belong to a user later. Like, you know, and if we look at the requirements right over here, let's just assume all posts, this is kind of like a private journal. So all posts are written by you and only shown to you. And we can always add that kind of stuff later.
You'll need a way to communicate with the user. Yeah,
like we need something to handle kind of this logic. The whole like orchestration of like showing them a menu, taking in options, presenting them with stuff. Do you guys know what we call those kinds of things in a program? So in the same way that we call like a post class, you guys know we call those models that they're talking to our database. We generally call the object that controls all this a controller, right? There's a pattern you guys are going to learn soon called MVC. It's a paradigm for how we organize code, and it stands for model, view, controller. And the model is basically the database. The view is like the presentation. So let's say this menu over here had like, you know, colors or like formatting, or was a website where like you'd have like tables and forms and links. That's all defined in our view code. And because we're building a pretty simple CLI, we're not going to have a lot of that. And then you have a controller. And I always think of a controller as kind of like a waiter in a restaurant, right? The waiter's job is not to know how to do anything, right? All it needs to do is take the order from the person and then bring it to the model and then bring it back to the person. Or sorry, bring it to the chef, right? So like a waiter is really responsible for like moving things from like the person who's ordering the food to the chef that's making the food and then back and forth, okay? And you guys will see how that kind of plays out. So the next thing I like to do is sort of organize my code. So I'm going to create a folder called DB, which will have like my migrations. And I'm going to call a folder called bin. And in here is going to be like the main executable folder, the file. And I'll kind of explain these if we haven't gone through this kind of structure yet. And I'm going to have a folder called lib, which will have my model. Okay? And in the bin file, we generally put our executables. So I'm just going to make a file called blog. And have you guys learned about this line yet?
Not in detail.
Cool. So this is basically like a paradigm in like Linux systems because, let's just say this. So what this line of code is going to hopefully do, if I did it right, is basically tell my system that, hey, this program is written in Ruby, right? And now I should be able to say like, because over here when I say Ruby, I'm basically explicitly telling my system, hey, read the code in this file using the Ruby interpreter. It works, right? But if I wanted to basically tell my system, hey, just run this program, the first problem I get is permission denied, which is your computer, or at least on this like kind of like developer level, it won't actually run any programs unless you give it permission to. So we just say, and I'll show you what that looks like really quick. Okay, so when you say ls minus lah, those flags are saying list, so make them vertical, list all my files vertically, give me all of the attributes and make them human readable. And you see these tick marks over here? These are telling you the permissions you have. And what it's telling me is that I'm allowed to read that file and I'm allowed to write to that file, but over here I'm missing a flag that allows me to execute it. So use a command called modify the permissions, change mod on blog, and +X gives it an executable permission. And now you see how it says over here there's that X flag. That tells me I'm now allowed to run that program. And I could just say blog. Okay? That stuff's not as important as anything else we're going to cover, but it's a little bit about how permissions work on your operating system. Okay, so now we have, and there's really no difference between, well, the only difference between saying Ruby blog versus /blog is imagine if you gave this program to another person and they wanted to have a blog. Like, knowing that all I need to do is type in blog to run it, that's really easy to explain to them. If I need to explain to them, hey, type in Ruby and then blog, it's a little more confusing. So that's why we do that. Does that kind of make sense? A little bit?
Yep, so far so good.
Okay. As I said, it's not like the most important thing. But the point of this file is I always think of a program as kind of like a really big set of dominoes, right? What you, the programmer, do is basically set up all the dominoes in advance so that when someone starts the program and knocks over that first domino, everything else goes exactly right. Does that make sense? And this bin file is our first domino. It's basically the thing, it's the button the person presses to start your program, okay? And we actually want it to be as simple as possible. We don't want to put a ton of code in here. We really want this file to really immediately go and ask another file to do all the work. And what I mean by that is, imagine if we had something called a blog controller. Like, like if we had something called a class called a blog controller, right? Or let's even just make it like blog program. We have a new instance of our blog program, and then I'm just going to call start on it, right? That would basically be a nice way to then say all the functionality for like saying hello, presenting the menu, asking them what they want to do. All of that functionality is going to live in this object. And it's like we're delegating. Does that kind of make sense? So instead of saying like something like in this file saying puts, welcome to your blog. Main menu. Sorry, one second. Cool. Choice equals gets.strip. Whatever, I don't know. I like to a lot of times write the code I wish I had, right? So like, I don't know. All right. Like in theory, that's a very high level idea of what we want to do. In that we're going to ask the person for, here's our menu. And now we're asking them for what choice they want. And then we have a case statement. Everyone know what a case statement does? No? Okay. So let's do this. If yeah, just like that. Right? So the thing about the case statement or the if statement over here is, yeah, don't forget to type questions. But this in a nutshell, this like lines 5 through 6, that's equivalent to kind of all of this logic that we wrote up here, right? It doesn't do all of the work in that we can't like save a post yet. We don't have a model. We don't have any migrations. There's no active record. But like the high level like organization of our program is done, right? We've achieved all of our goals. We've welcomed the person. We're giving them a menu of options where we say type 1 to say read post, type 2 to write. We get the input of their choice, and then we start branching. And we say either they're going to be listing the blog posts or they're going to be writing it, right? And what's nice about like approaching kind of the program this way is we're basically like, we're stubbing out all of the high level stuff without getting into any details. We're getting like a lot of things working at the top of the program, but like we're not dealing with any of the heavy logic or problems yet. It's just a way of kind of approaching your code as like always sort of doing the easiest stuff first, okay? And I always like to think of the easiest stuff being the stuff that the person ends up seeing. So now if I run my program, we can kind of see how this would work. Right, so it's giving me a main menu, and if I type in 1, it doesn't work. Right, so something about typing in 1, it should have said this, right? Because I typed in 1, and it says if choice equals 1, then it says puts list posts, but it didn't say that. So something is off already. So we should kind of fix that. Yeah? Anyone want to figure out what happened? So why wouldn't it, let's try again. Let's try 2. Maybe it's just a bug with 1. So the comparison's not working. How do we debug this?
I want to try the case statement just because we haven't seen that very much.
Yeah. Well, the case statement would be a different way to get this working, but in theory, an if statement should be able to get it working. And because we have an if statement in there, let's do the if statement. So if I typed in choice, like I always think about kind of stubbing out our answers. Romy, what's your question?
It's not a question, but I think it's because you're trying to compare it with an integer and gets a string, not an integer.
That's right. I always think about like replacing values. I typed in 1. If choice was literally the number 1, then this should work, right? So that would be the first thing I would confirm is like now, okay, cool. It said list posts. So I know that this isn't the problem, which means that for whatever reason, when I type in 1, it's not actually a 1. And one way I could have confirmed that is by saying, if I raise choice.inspect, let's see what happens when I type in 1. Oops. So when I type in 1, what raise does is it takes this value and you say .inspect to convert it to a Ruby object, and it shows it to you and then stops your program. So I typed in 1, but what did I get back over here?
The string 1.
The string 1. And that's what Romy said was the disconnect, right? This is a nice little debugging technique, right? Where you basically are creating an error to stop your program, and you're able to bring a value, like a variable, up to the top of your program to look at it. And you always have to say whatever the value is, like even if I said raise 1, you always have to just attach a .inspect onto it. Okay? A lot of the yeah.
So raise literally just, it creates an error for you?
It raises an error. It raises an error to the top of the stack. It's a good way to stop your program and just confirm something. Okay. What was I going to say? Yeah, okay. Oh, I was going to say, the hard part about programming, I feel like a lot of times is you just don't know what any value is while you're coding. In the sense that, like, I assumed choice was going to be a number, and it turns out it wasn't. And all those assumptions in your code are what create errors. Like, you assumed that this method was going to behave this way. You assumed that this variable is going to have this kind of value. And every time one of your assumptions is wrong, your program's not going to work the way you wanted it to. Okay? So just always think about, what assumptions have I made about like the state of the system, of the variables, of the values that may not be right, because debugging is all about confirming one at a time each of those assumptions. So I'm just going to convert that to a number. Great. And now I know I can like branch out the logic of the program, so I can present a workable menu. Good? Okay. So the difference between a case statement and an if statement, let's talk about it. What's the difference between these two blocks of code? What doesn't get repeated all the time?
The condition.
Yep. It's this.
You're
Yeah.
mute.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about why a case statement is nice versus an if statement.
Less repetition.
Yeah. And it uses strict conditional. So it basically searches for exactly for what you want. So in this case, I saw like case to integer. Basically says if case equals 1, it's like an if statement but written more concisely.
Yeah, it's a specific kind of if statement for when the comparison is always to the same variable. right? So like I can't then say, well, when, you know, name is Avi, right? Every case is always a comparison to this object. So it's really good when you like, you know, imagine then if I had to say like else if choice equals 3, else if choice equals 4. Or if you're just comparing like the same variable to like 10 different values, re-expressing that in else if is kind of always cumbersome. So this is known as a case or like a switch, right? When it's one variable to a lot of different options, we can use a case statement. This is now a little nicer. Makes sense? But this is never wrong. It's just, you know, cases are nice for menus. Again, because you really just need to like, it just even kind of looks like a menu, you know? You're taking one choice, right? And then when it's 1, do this. When it's 2, and then you can also say when else. Okay? And then,
Question.
yes.
At the top of your case statement where it says case choice.2i,
Mm-hmm.
can you put other methods in that method chain?
Yep, you can keep on going. What case is just expecting a value. So like you can put any, you know, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 would be basically like saying case 4, right?
Okay.
So it's basically, this is an expression. It's expecting a value, right? Whatever you put in there, if you say like choice.2s.2i.strip.2i, right? Whatever the return value of this expression is going to be what you're comparing.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Can
Okay.
you put in, for example, if some kind of conditional where if they write out the word number 1 and it's a string, you can say that's not valid. Please type in a number.
Yeah, so we would do that kind of up top. We would say something like either up here saying like if this isn't going to be exactly what you want, but let's just kind of go it over else. And tell me a little bit about why this isn't going to be exactly what you want. So I'm going to type in 1.
Isn't it always going to be a string?
I thought it was, but apparently it isn't. Huh. Oh, okay, cool, because of that. Yeah, it's always going to be a string. How you want to, because like if I type in 1, the person is always getting back a string. The way to know that is a string an actual number, like if they type in, how would you check like like what's the difference between 1 and 1, right? This is a string and this is an integer. But this is really, even though it's a string, it really is an integer, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the way to basically make that comparison, when you say 1 to I, you will get back 1. If you say A to I, you will get back 0. So basically, if you try to convert a string that isn't a number into a number, you always get back 0. So you could say something like if str.2i is greater than 0, then I know it's true. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if I put in, like in the same exact, if I say now say str equals 1, then I say if str.2i is greater than 0, puts number, else right? Because when you convert a string that is a number to a number, you'll get the actual number. It'll be greater than 0. That's one way, but there's like 100 different ways to do it. Okay. So we have our choice, we have our menu, and now we want to get to some we want to kind of talk about the controller idea. Because you can imagine in here, there's going to be a ton of code. Like if we had a post class, I would then say each do, and then like print out the title. Something like that, right? But then I have to say like, okay, puts, which do you want to read? And then there's going to be like, reading choice. And what you can already feel like is how big is this file going to be?
Right.
It's going to be big. And let's think about the logic, the kind of units of work. This is like the main action. This is like over here, the list posts action. This is the read a post action, right? This down here is the write a post action. That makes sense, like in terms of like conceptual units of work? Yeah? Hello?
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely way too much work.
Yeah, it's just going to get so big, and it's one file, and it's doing like so many things. It's printing out the menu. It's listing out all the posts. It's allowing you to read it. We need some way to break this up into like small things, right?
You could put each of these in methods. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like I want to basically create an object that is responsible for this sort of like directioning or like delegation, right? Sort of like, I don't know, like a conductor or like, again, like I always think of it as a waiter as a restaurant. Like it knows how to do the things I want to do, or it knows how to go and ask other people to do that work. So the way I'd kind of think of it is, let's just say blog controller. And now I'm going to create a new object in my lib folder called a blog controller.rb. Sorry, just 1 second. 2. Almost. All right. Let's talk about this code. So, what is this blog controller class doing?
The same thing, but it got delegated over to just one class for that.
Yeah, and what else is really cool about kind of the case statement now?
You have it more organized, and like you said, it actually looks like a menu.
Yeah, and is there ever going to be any more chance where I put actually more code in this like case 1?
No, you
Because
put it in the list post.
That's right. I've sort of like created an architecture where like everything can live in its own like area and not like ever get more complicated. And if let's say that I wanted a third option of logging in, is there like a clear pattern of exactly what to do to add another option?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Because the case statement basically it concises, it pulls methods for whatever selection you need.
Yeah, like if I said puts 3 magic, then I would just basically do like, okay, well, guess what? When 3 magic, and now a new method called magic puts magic, right? It becomes like a really strong pattern, right? Does that kind of make sense? Like for every choice, we just have a method that represents that action, right?
Yeah. I just wanted to point out, you have with write post, you have an extra quote.
Oh, yep, there you go. Thank you.
Sorry.
Awesome. So that's a nice little, so this is what a controller really does, is it kind of breaks down the logic of like how my program gets orchestrated, like what happens when in this kind of way, right? And now whenever a blog controller, I mean, I did an initialize, but actually I'm going to make it start. Now with this, am I ever going to add more code to this file?
Hopefully not.
Yeah, it's done. Because if I wanted more functionality, where does it go? In this file?
No.
That's really good, right? Like this file does its job. It basically asks the other object how to work, okay? And let's see if this works. It's not going to work, but let's see why. Anyone want to guess why it's not going to work?
Because it has no way to pull in the information from that other file.
Boom. It just has no idea what a block controller is. So we can say require okay.
Avi, quick question. What is the difference between require and require relative, and how do you know what to put in the quotes?
Great question. Do you guys know what a path is?
Yes and no.
Okay, I love that. That was a great answer. Okay, so a path is basically a location of where a file is on your computer. Okay, so right now I want to go into this lib directory, so I can say cd lib, right? And now I'm in that lib directory. I want to go back into that lib directory. Why can't I go back to the lib directory from my home directory?
You're already there.
Well, I'm outside of it.
Oh.
Because it's
Yeah.
ls, you're not going to find it.
Yep. This is your path. A path is just basically like a location on your hard drive. Okay? So this is what's called a full path. That first slash, it means the root of your computer, the like top level directory, the first folder. And then you have a folder called users, then you have a folder called Avi, then you have a folder called CLI Blog, then you have a folder called lib, or an absolute path, right? If I type in cd this from anywhere on my computer, it will always go to the right directory. Why? Is there any ambiguity? Like here, I'll go to my desktop. Right? There's just no ambiguity. I'm telling my computer exactly where to move. Right? That's a full path. Then you have relative paths, where I can say like something like cd lib. In order for this code to work, lib must be relative to where I currently am. Right? And where you currently are is called your working directory, also known as your dot. Okay? So like, if I say pwd, that's my working directory. It's kind of like if I go into my desktop and I open up this playlist folder, right? That's now my working directory, this folder of music, right? But because we don't have like boxes and graphics in the command line, you have to kind of think about where you currently are. Right now, I am in a directory called CLI Blog, okay? So when you say require in Ruby, you can say, I want to require, well, this is interesting because let's say I say require lib blog controller. This path over here, that's only correct if I'm at the top of my folder, right? Like if Ruby is starting the program from inside of the top level directory, then it could go into lib and find this file, right?
Yep.
But what if Ruby is starting the program from the bin directory? And the bin directory, where this file is the current path. Then inside of the bin directory, is there a folder called lib?
Nope.
So would require be able to find that?
No, it'd probably raise an error, right?
Yeah. So one, when you say require, you have to know where the program is being run from, because require is operating from the file that first ran the program. So here's a really weird thing, okay?
No.
Right now, I'm at the top of my directory, right? If I say ruby bin blog, right? Okay, so I have a method, show undefined local variable method. Let me just fix that bug really quick. Okay, cool. Okay, so when I ran the program from the top of my directory, CLI blog, did it work? Was it able to find blog controller?
No.
Well,
Oh, it was.
it was.
It
Okay,
ran, right?
cool. Now I'm going to go into the bin directory. Now I'm running the program from the bin directory, right? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Was it able to find the blog controller?
Nope.
Why not?
Because it required the block controller from the lib folder, which is one folder above, one directory above where you currently are.
Yeah, so it's really weird though, because if I use require to require files, then it seems like what I need to know is where the person is running the program from.
Mm-hmm.
Is that easy to manage?
Easy to manage, define manage.
Like if the person decides to be in the bin directory when they run my program, it's not going to work. Or I need to change that to, okay, go up. Now it'll work. But then if I go back to the top of my program's directory, the root of it, and I run the file from there, then it doesn't work. Right? Require is relative to where the program is being run from. Require relative is relative to this file. Kesha, does that make sense?
Yes.
This is also one of those, it's a hard concept, but you have to understand where you are in your command line, when you're running a program. You have to understand where the program is being run from. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah? The difference between like being in the bin directory and what's relative to the bin directory versus what's relative to the CLI blog directory? I can't hear any of you.
It does seem to make sense.
It makes sense from an executable standpoint because you're basically asking it to run. You're asking the program to run using components from a specific place. If the program is not in a specific place, if you're not initiating the program in a specific place, it can't start because the parts it needs to start is not where you want them to be.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, yeah, I mean, think about asking for directions, right? If I'm standing on, you know, I don't know. If I'm standing on 42nd Street and I'm saying, hey, where's 40th Street? I could say it's 2 blocks to the south, right? And as long as you're on 42nd Street, 40th Street is 2 blocks to the south. But if you're on 47th Street, is 40th Street 2 blocks to the south? No, because my directions were relative to where you were. That's what require is. It's always relative to where the person is. But if I'm saying require relative, from the directions of, like, you know, right? That's the difference. Okay? Does that make sense?
That makes a whole lot more sense. Like, now
Okay.
I understand it.
Right. 40th Street is 2 blocks 2 blocks south from 42nd Street. Always true. 2 blocks to the south, only true when you are on 42nd Street. This is the 2 blocks south. Require relative is this file is, because this file is on the current file we're in, blog, is 42nd Street. And I'm saying that lib blog controller is 1 directory up, 1 down, and then you'll find the file. Always true. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Great. Yeah, this is a good metaphor. 2 blocks to the south is contextual. It requires knowing where you are to be true. Whereas the other one is it's basically implying where you already are to be true. Okay? The other thing is require relative is for files. Do you guys know what gems are yet?
Yeah.
Require relative will never load a gem. Require will. Okay? So generally, we use require relative for files and require for gems. Maybe I should have just started there. Okay. So we have now this kind of like setup. We're getting our files correct. And let's make sure everything's still working, right? So cool. It says undefined local variable method list posts. I spelled that wrong. So there we go. And now here's also the cool part is I get the loop for free, right? Because it will keep on going to the main menu, because when you get to this else one and you say invalid entry, it goes back to main menu and starts back up. Okay?
Okay.
And that's our controller, right? It's basically now just figuring out, like, we just got to stub out, like, fill in this actual functionality, right? So which one of these do you want to do first? The ability to list a post or the ability to write a post, and why?
Write post.
Let's start with the right post.
Why?
Because if you don't write any posts, you won't have any to list.
Cool. That is, I love that approach. You could also, yeah, let's just do that. Great. Write a post. So I always like to write the code I wish I had. Because when you start, like, I'm sure in your head right now, you're like, well, I need a post class and I need all these other things. But it's nice to sort of like pretend it worked. Pretend that, I don't know, enter. Okay, and now at this point on line 33, let's actually do this. I don't know why I capitalized all this, but now it's weird. And I can't. All right, cool. Post text. equals gets that strip. Cool. And now what do I need? What object is missing?
A way to capture, I guess, all of what to do something with the text that they give back to you, store it somewhere.
Yeah. And where do we store it?
Probably in a database.
Yep. And in order to access the database, what are we going to use?
ActiveRecord.
Yeah. So we need a post class, right? So I really want to say is like post equals post.new. And then I want to say post.title equals post title. And then post.post, and then I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. And this is, again, what I mean by the code I wish I had. I wish that worked, right? So now it's easy because I just need to get that working. So what do we need to do to get that working?
Well, we need a post class first.
Cool. So new file, post.rb. Okay, continue, Kesha. Isha. How do I make a post class?
Class, capital post, and
End?
yeah.
Okay, cool. So you guys mentioned you want this to be an active record class, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what else do I need to do to the post class to make it an active record class?
It needs to inherit from ActiveRecord.
Okay, let's see if this works. So write posts, enter the title, blah, text. Okay. Uninitialized constant blog controller post, name error. What happened?
You need to relate ActiveRecord. You need to start that up too.
Okay, so I need to require ActiveRecord, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll require ActiveRecord. Same thing, uninitialized constant blog post. So tell me, which files have I loaded so far? ActiveRecord and the blog controller.
Post file. Right?
Yep. So it's interesting because it turns out that we need at least 3 lines of code in order to like load this program, right? And let's say we had another model like a user or an author class. And let's say we had another controller. How much code would we start adding to this file, blog? A lot. And didn't we say that we wanted to stop editing this file?
You do the require all.
Yeah, exactly. Or like some sort of environment, right? Like let's just say cool. Right? Now, here's this one file is now just responsible whether it uses require all, which is something I do like a lot. Let's get that gem in there. Now I could just say require all. Right? Way better. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. And write posts, blah, 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 blah. Awesome.
Oh.
Right? It's okay. New errors are good. Okay? It's not complaining.
New errors are scary.
They are scary, that's true, but it's not complaining about like not being able to find the active record or the blog controller. What's it complaining about? Read it literally.
No schema.
Well, not no schema.
It just doesn't have, it doesn't have a connection.
Right. Okay. We need to first connect to the database somewhere. Right. So this environment file is a nice place to like, if this file is really responsible for like collecting all collecting all the dominoes and making sure that like we have all the toys we need in order to kind of, you know, build out our set, this seems like a good place to connect to the database. All right, I'm just going to say this. ActiveRecord establish connection env database URL. All right, I don't like that because I don't want to use Postgres because we don't know what that is yet. So how to connect ActiveRecord to SQLite 3. How do I use Ruby to connect SQLite 3 database outside of Rails scripting language? These are all terrible answers. If you guys want some free, like, stack up ActiveRecord to SQLite 3. I mean, I'm just going to do it in a second if I can't find it. Okay. Okay, that's it. You tell it what adapter you want to use, which is basically like the kind of database. We're saying SQLite 3, and then where the database is. And then this is a hash of options. Okay? I think that's how you do it. I'm not sure. We're going to find out in a second. And then I probably need this gem also. Let's see if this works. Hey, cool. I think it worked. Yep. Okay. Nope. So it says no connection pool with primary found. All right. It's okay. Don't panic. We're going to figure this out. What we're going to do is we're going to Google this establish connection method and read some documentation on how it works. Okay. Adapter, host, username. Okay, this is what I thought I had.
We don't have a database file, do we?
Well, I thought I was going to just make it. I was hoping, because that's exactly what we wrote. Okay, so I'm just going to assume that it's not automatically making this file. So I'm just going to make that file myself. Okay, so right now it's still giving us this like it doesn't know what the hell we're talking about kind of thing. And I'm not super happy with my debugging process because in order to debug at this point, I need to like run my entire program. And like, you know, on one level, it'd be really nice if I just go into IRB and I say like require relative config environment, right? Well, can I load such file? Require all. Huh. I really didn't like that. I was hoping that would work. Why not? Okay, give me 1 second. I know what I'm trying to do. Which is, you guys know about pry?
Yep.
Yeah, I kind of want to build my own little console.
You missed
While you do that, hi Dara.
What did I misspell?
environment.
No, Dara joined us. Hey.
Okay, and then what am I doing wrong? Oh, bin. So dot bin console. Oh man, I will remember how to program.
How did you change the title on your terminal to say MacBomb Pro instead of MacBook Pro?
Network utility? No, network. You just change your computer name in the network pan. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll show you in a second. Oh, here we go. I thought it was somewhere here. I'll find it later.
Yeah.
It's in setting. I am share. Oh, and sharing. That's right. It's in the sharing preference pane. Okay. It's like it doesn't know about these gems. Is that possible? I mean, I must have had Pry installed. There's no way I haven't. I mean, I guess maybe I did upgrade Ruby recently.
The new Ruby came out just like a week ago, right?
Yeah, but I don't know when the last time I mean, I haven't been programming a ton, so.
I need to update mine.
Okay, cool. That's the problem. I just don't have all these gems installed. Have you guys learned about Bundler yet? Well, at the end, I'll show you
Yeah,
that.
use it.
The hard bundler sometimes. You know what I mean?
We're really close to having all my gems installed. Then this will work. Oh, this.
No.
Okay. Huh. All right, let's just try the blog again really quick. So we're just getting some random like load stuff and gem problems. We'll figure all that out. Okay, so this require all line. It didn't like that. I think it's supposed to be from the top of the directory. There we go. Okay, perfect. So what is this console? What I just basically built is, if we read this file console, all it does is it loads my code and gives me a Pry environment. So now I can say things like post, right? Because there's that class, and like I could say like blog controller.new.start. It's like you'll see like the use of this, which is that I've basically created an environment where I can play with my objects outside of my program. All right. So if we need to debug stuff, you'll see that it'll be nice to be able to do it from this little console. Okay. And the problem we were dealing with was we couldn't connect to the database. So like if I say post.create, it says right now, it's basically as though I'd written a line of code in my program to try to create a post. And last we left off, when I was running my program, it kept on complaining about that we didn't have a database established And now it seems as though we do have a database established because we have a new error. It says cannot find table posts. The last error we had was before I had this file, when I was running my program before, it was telling me that, oh, actually, I have no idea what changed. Maybe it was the gems not being there because it now did create the file for me. Here's how we're establishing our database connection. I thought that maybe when I said db myblog.sqlite, I thought ActiveRecord would just make that file and create the new database, and that's why it wasn't working. So, but apparently that did work. We definitely are connected to the database at this point because we're not getting an error about the connection. Now we're getting an error about not having a table called posts. So how do we make a table called posts?
You insert it?
Yeah, we can insert it. Does ActiveRecord come with like a different way to make tables?
It does. I would just remember the syntax for that.
Okay, so let's talk about SQL. And let's talk about this whole ActiveRecord kind of idea. Here's one way to make a table. Create table posts. This is just SQL, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I could say ID, integer, primary key.
Oh, we need to create a migration.
Yep. Titles, text,
Text.
body, text. Okay. Cool. That's my posts. Create table posts if it's create table if not exists, right? Okay. And then imagine a file called like migrator.rb, whatever. And what it does is I don't know. ActiveRecord, I'm making this up, but ActiveRecord.run create posts.sql, right? Conceptually, that would be a fun little file. All you have to do is write SQL, and this will automatically run the SQL against your database, right? But we don't like writing in a lot of different languages. It's hard enough to learn one language. So the idea of like writing both SQL and Ruby is getting annoying. And what ActiveRecord gives us is this ability to create a migration in Ruby. I could say create posts.rb, and then you can define in Ruby an ActiveRecord migration. And let's just read that kind of ActiveRecord migration. All right, looks like something like this. All right, we create a class called create posts, create table posts, and then t-string title, body. Cool. That's it. How have you guys learned how to run these migrations? Like now that we have this file, what do we do?
Only very briefly. That's next week's lecture.
Okay, because, right, so the idea here is that I need to find a way to take this migration and run it against my database, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can figure this out. How to run a migration outside of Rails. Because the hard part of what we're doing is we're using a lot of these Rails components, but we're not using them inside of the whole framework. Let's see what this is.
Don't we have to use rake? I remember we learned about that.
Yep, rake works.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but this is a cool gem. called standalone migrations, a Gem 2's Rails database migrations, and non-Rails projects, which is basically exactly what we're looking for. And you can see how it kind of works, right? It says install Ruby, Ruby Gems, and Ruby Database Driver. So Ruby Gem install standalone migrations. Let's just follow these instructions. I've never used this gem before. Let's see what happens, okay? Cool? All right. So that was instruction number 1. Add to rake file in your project's base directory. Okay. I'm literally, I have no idea. Does our project right now have a rake file?
No,
What do we do about that?
we haven't got to that part yet, but I'm
Well-
also make a rake file.
That's right, right? That's right. If your project, I don't know what a rake file is, so make it. It told me to make one. It said in your project's, add it to rake file in your project's base directory. If our project doesn't have a rake file in our base directory, let's make one. And then it says add this code to it. Great. Works for me. Why not? Add a database configuration to dbconfig.yaml in your project's base directory. Okay. Yeah, whatever. I'm just following instructions. dbconfig.yaml. All right, now here we got to like read all this stuff. Development, production, test, whatever. You know what? I'm actually not even going to edit any of that crap. I'm just going to keep it right, except for one thing. Is that the name of our development database file? What is it?
Posts.
That's the name of our table.
My blog.
Yeah, the database file is this. The classes, the tables are where we got post. So we're just going to do my blog. And then I don't even know what all of this crap is. I'm just ignoring it for now. More instructions. Then it says to create a new database migration, it says rake db new migration name equals foobar migration. Okay, let's just do that. So I'm going to say rake db new migration. I'm going to say name, and I'm going to say, yeah, create posts. Okay, so it made a new file in db migrate 2019. Cool. Awesome. I'm going to take my code from here and just copy it, and I'm going to delete this one. That was the one I made. Now I have this fancy one, and I like this one better. Okay, I have a migration apparently. Now it says the next step is to apply your newest migration. Type rake db migrate. Do you guys think it worked?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did we, like, besides knowing to change this random config.yaml, like my database path, did I need to know did I need to change anything else?
No.
Yeah, not so bad. And now let's try running my code. Write a post. Ta-da. This works. Hey, look at that. Your post has been saved as 1. Okay. So, remember how I said that everything is like a domino? It's like a game of dominoes. We start with this one command, and then everything else just happened. Okay? I want to close all these files. Yeah, sure. Let's save notes. Okay. Here's my project. Let's try this. I want you guys to tell me how the hell all of that worked. I want to backtrack. The only thing that happens is I'm about to press enter over here, and I want you to walk me through step by step what happens next. We have to follow the sequence, okay? And it's easy because all you have to, the only thing that you need to answer, and we're going to go in order. So I'm going to call on you, okay? The only thing you need to answer is literally what happens when at the next step. So I'm about to press .bin blog. What's my computer going to do next? Let's start with Decca.
It's going to read, it's going to go to blog, and that's where all the...
Well, you can, it's simpler than, the game is simple.
Okay.
You only have to literally, you're the computer, and I always say computers are stupid. You're not stupid. You are brilliant. Computers are stupid. Take nothing for granted, which is to say that if I press enter, the first part of your sentence was totally right. The only thing we know at this point is the computer is going to open that file and start to read it. If that file did a million things, we wouldn't know that until we actually opened it. Okay? So all we're going to do is open that file. Okay, great. Next person. Andrew, what's the literal only next thing that's going to happen? We're going line by line at this point.
Now it's going to hop over to our config directory and go into environment.
Okay, I'm really, if you've ever worked with me, I'm very pedantic. You're talking about line 3. But before line 3 was line 1. What is line 1 doing?
Well, it's commented, right? So it's not really actually going to do anything.
It's commented in Ruby, but not in Bash.
Oh, right.
This is telling our operating system that this program is written in Ruby. Okay? That's it. Keisha, what's the next thing that our computer is going to do?
It's going to read line 3.
And what's line 3 going to tell it to do?
To require the environment file in the config folder.
Awesome. Great. Andrew, what's the next thing that's going to happen? We're going line by line. It's quick.
It's requiring ActiveRecord, the ActiveRecord gem.
Great. Deco, what's the next thing?
Going to require all the models.
Well, is it going to do that, or is it just going to load the gem?
It's going to load the gem.
That's right. Okay, this is important because programming is hard when you actually try to not be a computer. Like what you were saying was right. You're just jumping. You're saying, listen, I know what's going on. We're requiring that gem so we can require all the models. But you're coupling things together. And line 2 is only actually just loading the gem, right? Yeah. Great. Line 3. Will.
It's going to require SQLite 3.
Great. Line 5. Keisha. Did she jump off?
Sorry, I was on mute. It's going to require everything in the lib folder.
Great. So we're not going to have to read all these because when it does that, do these files do anything yet?
No, it's just loading them.
That's right. It's just loading them. Perfect. Awesome. Romy, what's the next file going to do? What's the next line?
It's going to create a connection
to our database, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. Now there's a problem, which is we're at the end of this. And where do we have to go jump back to? How do we even get to this file? We were over here, right? Now we get to line 5, okay? Deca, what is line 5 doing?
It starts a new instance of block controller.
That's right. And I really love that you did not say it calls the start method, right? What you said is like it starts a new instance, but that's actually the first part. And then it says we have the start method, right? So now we get to jump into the start method. And now main menu. Nerando, what is main menu doing?
So main menu is going to, it's printing out a variety of options to choose from. Yeah, that's what it is.
Cool. And assuming that we type in right post, who else wants to answer that one?
It'll call on the right post method.
Great. And then Romy, continue. Tell me about the right post method.
First, it'll enter the title for your post into the console, and then it's going to wait for someone to type type in the thing, and whatever it gets typed in, it saves it to that variable.
Right. Cool. Let's jump to this line and let's go to the post class. The post class is deceivingly simple, right? There's literally nothing in it. But how does it do all the magic?
Inheriting from the active record.
Active record, right? And what made the active record kind of connection? Why did we need to build this migration?
So we can make a table.
Yep. So, I mean, that was kind of interesting because I think at first when I got that working, like based on the look on all of your faces, it was just kind of like, how the hell did that work? Right? Like, oh, I broke it. So it didn't work. What did I break about it?
Go back to post. Did you move something in post?
All right, let's just debug this real quick. Bin blog, no such file or directory in lib. Oh, there we go. Okay, right, post. Right, like there was a moment when I did that the first time where you guys like, wait, how did that happen? And like that exercise of being able to go back to the start of your program and like literally line by line re-explain to yourself how it all worked, like re-understanding the sequence of events, that's like useful. As your programs get larger, it's really, really hard to keep track of that sometimes. And you can always, as long as you're kind of like not trying to figure everything out at once, don't forget, if your computer can understand it, you can. Because your computer is only reading one line at a time, okay? So that exercise of like, when you get a unit of work working, you should stop and like re-explain yourself how you got there. And learning how to read other people's codes. Like imagine when after build week, you guys are all going to build projects similar to this. A really good exercise would be to share each other's code and then see if you can figure out how someone else got their project working. And there's no mystery. If the computer can interpret it while you didn't write their code, you should be able to follow it. And you always want to start with that like first domino, which is going to be like these bin files, or like in a web server, the rack file. Okay? That makes sense why this is useful to like go line by line and see how everything works.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now we're going to build this last piece of functionality, which is we're going to make list posts real. Okay? So if we go back to our notes, right, this is what we want to have them do. Okay? This is what we're trying to get. Okay, so who wants to try to build this? Help me out.
I need to query something.
Yeah, what?
Database.
My
Yep.
post.
We need to query something, the database. Let's be specific. What table in the database do we need to query? And how do we do that? Through which model? Post model. I think someone said it, but there's some feedback, so I couldn't hear it. Let's go play with our console for a second. This is what's fun about our console. Like I could just say like, watch, like post dot first, right? Post dot first dot title. Post dot first dot created at. Let's say post equals post dot first, post dot title equals new title, p dot title changed. Cool. P dot changes. You guys get what I can do with this kind of console?
Yeah.
And like, here's all the console. What happens there? What is this file doing?
Starting a price session.
With what? What's the difference between these two prize sessions.
You no longer have access to your project, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Load it up.
So if I say post.all, well, actually, let's do something really fun. Oh, I'm so excited for this. So I want to print out all the post titles. All right. Who knows how to build class methods? Everyone's raising their hand.
Yeah,
Okay.
we all should.
Awesome. Remember how I said I want the code I wish I had to work? I want that shit to work. Line 30, post.print titles. What do I need to do?
Make a print titles method.
What kind of method?
Class method.
Class method, right? Remember, I'm going to be really pedantic. I'm going to force you guys to always be specific. Be as specific as you can. Okay? All right. How do I make a class method?
Define self.
Oh, wait. Hold on one second. This is an ActiveRecord class. Are you telling me that I can just go into an ActiveRecord class and just add class methods as though these ActiveRecord classes were like plain old Ruby classes where I could do whatever I want?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
But that'd be crazy. There has to be some like special thing about these Ruby ActiveRecord classes that would prevent me, a programmer, from just doing whatever I want, right?
Nope.
Nope.
That's right. So I just build a class method. All right, I cheated. Okay, how do I build a class method?
Self dot
What do we call it? Print
something. I forget what.
titles.
Print titles.
Awesome. And now, what should this do? We need to find all the posts. How do I do that?
Post.all.
How do I iterate over them and get them one at a time?
We could just do each for this, I think.
How do I print out the title of that instance?
So it'd be p dot content, I think is what you called it.
I can't remember. But here's a nice thing.
Titles.
I don't need to remember. I apparently called it body. Oh, well, title. Sorry. Title. Cool. Awesome. Great. That's nice because you know what I didn't have to do? I didn't have to go into here and add a whole bunch of logic. It's that same pattern of like delegating, right? And now what's nice too is let's say some other part of my program ever needed to print all of the titles for the posts. Would it be really easy to reuse this component?
Yeah.
Would it be really easy to reuse that component?
Yes.
No, the controller component is related to all this, what choice did they make and the selections and all stuff like that. Right? This component, the post class having a new like method, watch how easy it is for me to test it also. Right, there it goes. It printed my titles. Right? So that's really nice. Like, I mean, you know, again, this is actually what I think was hard for you guys is that knowing to like stop and not build all the logic into this method. I mean, like, oh, I can just create a class method that does this. And these like, you know, when you're building these small units of work, like literally like stupidly small things, it's not hard. It gets hard when you're trying to like build like many things at once, right? Now I can print the titles. Let's just add something. I want these to always also have a number. So that should be like, you know, 1 dot. How can we do that?
Each with index.
Damn. Now what?
P dot title. Well, actually, index over there, you're gonna put index plus 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
You're making our whole cohort look good.
What?
I said Decca in here making all of us look good.
I wish.
No, that was great.
I'll just never forget that one because I spent hours on trying to figure out how to do that a few months.
Listen, now you have a learning process.
Yeah.
Apparently, as long as you spend hours trying to learn how to do something, it works. Right, there you go. 1 and 2. Perfect. Okay. So now, which would you like to read? All right, who wants to fill out? This is going to be hard. So let's assume they typed in. What would I need to do?
Query the second one.
All right, listen. Can we have someone besides Decca answer? Okay. How do I query the second one?
My logic's just like if
Well,
what they entered.
assume they typed in 2 for now. Assume reading choice is 2. So what do I write? How do you query a post? How do you...
A select statement, maybe?
It is a select statement, Tiffany. So with ActiveRecord, we want to, knowing that it's a select statement in SQL is great. What's the ActiveRecord method on a class that lets me select a post?
I think it's just find, right? And then you use 2 as a as the
That's
index. Or the ID rather.
Yep. As in, Tiffany, what you were thinking was select star from posts. I'm going to show you something so cool, where ID equals 2. That was what was in your head.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
That's SQL. That's what ActiveRecord is doing. What we're trying now learn is to start thinking about, know the under the hood, the SQL. This post.find is like object orientation. It's allowing you to express that not on SQL's term, but on Ruby's terms, on ActiveRecord's terms. And in fact, okay, I lied about that. So there's a toSQL method that you can call on these ActiveRecord class methods like that. That will actually show you that. Like if I say post.where, so it'll actually show you the SQL it's generating. Is that kind of cool?
Yep.
But remember, we're trying to start to train our mind into thinking of post.all, post.where, post.find, right? Knowing the SQL underneath it is really important because eventually you're going to want to do something that ActiveRecord doesn't just come out of the box and let you do. But being able to start like thinking higher level, it's going to be really helpful for y'all. Okay. So now instead of saying post.find2, what should I replace the 2 with?
Reading choice.
Exactly. Great. And now I want to print out the title of that post.
It'd be just a post.title, right?
Yep. And then I want to print out the body of that post. How do I do that?
Same thing, but just post.body.
Great. And then I want to go back to list. I want to relist all the posts. How do I do that?
Post.print titles.
Yeah, but let's just actually do this. Let's recall this method. That way it doesn't just print the titles, but actually rather just redoes the entire flow.
Oh.
Right? And then also just, yeah, let's do that. Let's see how our program works. Whoops. One, read posts. Oh, I did that again. 1, ta-da, this works, awesome. Which I like to read. 2, cool. It's working.
But now we're stuck in a loop, right? It's just going to keep.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, this works. Not like super into it, but it'll be good enough. What did I just do?
You allowed the person to exit if they type main menu, which comes back as 0.
Yep, how did I do that, Will?
2 integer equals 0 if the string is not a number.
Yep. I'm basically saying if that they type in anything besides a number.
I know. You texted me.
So read posts. Would you like to read? Type main for main menu. I'm saying main, but really, if I do read posts and I do anything that's not a number, it'll take me back to the main menu. But if I do like 2 or 1, then I can, read that post. Cool. All right. I'm going to share this code with everyone. Uh-oh.
Avi, did you post your Flatiron talk from the other day? Because I guess your battery died before you could.
Was I recording that?
I don't know.
No, I don't think I recorded that, but I'm sure I can find a recording of it. All right, let me just push this up. Great.
Thanks for your help today, Avi.
No problem. Get remove origin. Oh, come on. All right, one more time. Oh, fuck.
I think the most interesting part about this part here is just to see that I'm not the only person who has these moments.
I swear, everyone always says that, and like all programmers are like, come on guys, why do you ever think that any of us aren't doing this all day?
Because y'all do it I was thinking that's really like hard to remember all of the Git commands, and
Of course it is.
I'm here watching you go at this thing, and I'm like, thank you, Jesus. I'm not the only person who's dealing with this thing. Oh, dear. Wow. Okay.
But it's like to see an expert get stuck in that is like, oh.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, literally, it's not like I swear, I'm not like every programmer I know is just sitting around doing what I'm doing right now all day. It's impossible. Like, what do you guys think? Like, programmers aren't like made of like, we can't remember everything. There's too much. It's just too much. I don't know how to say it. I am losing my shit right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I did it.
Woo.
See? There we go.
Yay.
All right. I'll upload this video, and you guys can read the code. Again, that process of like breaking it down, how did everything work, right? It always starts from like an entry point. Like, I'm just going to add a README. Right.
Okay.
That's like if I ever saw these instructions in a program and I wanted to know how it would work, I would just open up this file and I would just start going through the sequence of code that's in there. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Enjoy your Sundays, everyone.
All right, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much again, Avi.
Thanks, Avi.
Thanks again. See you later.
Thanks.
Oh, actually, before I leave, I'm just going to paste this into the chat. But I'll share this in your Slack group to the video, okay?
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.
Appreciate it.
See ya. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.